Hey, Garbage Day readers and Panic World listeners. If you want to come to a live show that incorporates the general vibes and atmosphere of those two things, you can do that at the Bell House next week in Brooklyn, October 23rd. We have great guests, including Semaphore's Ben Smith, writer Magdalene Taylor, podcaster Akila Hughes. She was on our episode last week, and Morning Brew's Dan Toomey. It'll be very fun. It's all about the election. The show will never happen again unless, I don't know, we end up with the exact same election in 4 years, which is possible, I suppose, but probably not. So you can get tickets. The link will be into the body of today's show. You can also find tickets over on Garbage Day. I will see you all there. I love you. One quick note before we get to today's episode. Our guest, Caroline, decided that it would be better to record her side of the interview on the floor of her condo's gym because she said the Wi-Fi was better there. And then at one point she has to move to the lobby of her condo because someone needed to use the gym. So that would explain certain audio things that will happen during today's episode. It'll be fun, trust me. It's like Hot Ones, but for crazy internet stories.
Oh, I love it. This is like my ideal situation. The only way this could be better is if we were actually doing hot sauces as well.
I am also a hot sauce person.
Okay, next interview, the three of us get together in person and we do Hot Ones, but in this Florida gym, obviously.
I love it. Perfect. I think that's perfect. Yeah. So I want to start with a question, which is, who was the first internet woman on the internet that you were obsessed with?
Part of me is thinking maybe like the popular girls from my boarding school, like stalking them on Facebook.
Okay, cool.
Maybe Emma Watson, like stalking her on the internet.
So the reason I asked this is because every internet era had girls that people obsess over and freak out about. You know, a community latches onto these women or these girls. They create this parasocial relationship that's fueled by all kinds of resentful attraction. And it usually ends with, a cyber army of men trying to ruin their lives. So this is Panic World, and I'm Ryan Broderick. This is a show about the witch hunts, moral panics, and viral freakouts that boil up out of the weirdest, most confusing corners of the internet. And we wanted to bring you on today, Caroline, to talk about the internet women that the internet loves to hate and how this cycle has sort of progressed throughout internet history. And so I want to start with, I think, maybe kind of a complicated question, which is, how would you describe your internet journey concisely? How, for people who don't know who you are, sort of like, what are the spark notes there?
I was one of the first people on Instagram to sort of like pioneer using the long form narrative caption when it was still like a very, very weird thing to do. And I used it to tell stories about my time as an American undergraduate at the University of Cambridge. Balls and castles and starlight and tuxedos. But there was also a lot going under the surface. I was really struggling with amphetamine addiction, like Adderall, took over my life. Oh my God, thank God it's not an old person coming to work out. Although, can you imagine how iconic that would be if we just had like an elderly Florida like octogenarian just doing bicep curls in the background of this interview? I just feel like that would be...
I think it's a good aesthetic. I think it's really good, yeah.
I feel like it would be viral as hell. Oh, a big part is I bought followers. Not all my followers, just the first 40,000. I buy them.
Right.
I hire my best friend to help me write captions for an audience of no one. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm ready to leverage my now real 500,000 following into a book deal, but I'm way too addicted to Adderall. So I call up that girl again, having fallen out of touch for 3 years, and we co-write a document that we sell to publishers about this fairy tale version of my life. And that's when things sort of collapse. As soon as I'm forced to turn that, forced is the wrong word. As soon as push comes to shove and it's time to turn the book in, through my own stupidity, my own 22-year-old stupidity, sold to publishers. When it came time to write that, I didn't want to, and book deal fell apart. And then that best friend, years later, That friend, when I got canceled for that, contacted the Cut. I don't know why I keep calling her a friend. That's so crazy. Yeah. Ex-friend pitched the Cut a version of that same story I just told you, but where she leaves out those 3 years where I built a brand by myself. And so she really positioned herself as like that I was just a dumb influencer which really fits that mold of what kind of women people love to hate on the internet.
What I think is really fascinating is this sort of like version of your life that the internet consumes and the version of your life that is real. And when we started to look back at kind of like the infamous women of each internet age, we kind of noticed the same dynamics playing out. And we wanted to start at the very beginning as far as we can tell. In 1996, have you heard of Jenny Cam?
No.
So this is really interesting. So Jenny Cam.
Oh, I love internet lore. You know, I collect memoirs by YouTubers. I have a whole ass pyramid of them at my house. Tell me about Jenny Cam.
Okay, so Jenny Cam, real name is Jennifer Ringley. She's a junior in college. She buys a web camera. She writes a script for the web camera that takes a photo every 15 minutes. And she puts it on a website. And she basically starts documenting her life through like snapshots on this website.
What? She wrote, so what is she, like a computer science major? She wrote like an algorithm. And is the camera handheld? Or is it like attached to a computer?
It's like a little webcam. So it's like taking these photos, and she gets so popular that at one point she kisses a guy on camera and it like crashes her website. Like that's how popular she gets in this early internet age. We tried to find some examples of like what she was doing, but they're kind of lost to history. But we did find this. I want to read this to you from our FAQ section. So it says, what can I expect to see on Jenny Cam? And it says, anything I may be doing in my dorm room, reading, writing email, watching TV, playing with my hedgehog spree, rearranging my room, doing aerobics, just about anything. Since my dorm room is my house, I do anything in here and any person would do in their whole house. And at the peak, Jenny, when she switched over to live streaming properly, she was doing 4 million page views a day and was being written about by over 100 different publications across the internet. And this was in the late 90s. Yeah.
Wow.
She also had a subscription program for $15, which I think is pretty cool.
Wait, that's so cool. You know, I always think of Tila Tequila as the first influencer, but she had MySpace, so this is like way predating that. And things were really yeah. How are we to change clothes?
She would just change in front of the camera. Yeah, it was like Wild West days of the internet.
Okay, I'm obsessed with Jenny Cam.
Yeah, at times she'd be naked, but mostly it was boring and pretty wholesome, especially compared to, you know, what it would be like now. Take a guess, what community of internet people made this less wholesome?
Oh, man, I'm already thinking that. I'm asking about her changing. Like, that's my first thought is like, how are we dealing with the inevitable sexualization of this?
Well, specifically, it was men who were collecting screenshots of her feet and chronicling them on a separate website. So it was the foot guys that came first for Jenny.
Oh, interesting. So actually not all men, just all feet men is what you're trying to say.
All feet men. The problem is that like Jenny Cam's setup was like getting weirder. Her fan base was getting stranger, but also her profile was getting bigger. So I want to send you a clip. We're going to watch this together. This is Jenny on the David Letterman show. And I'm going to ask you to skip to minute 3:30, and we're going to watch it together.
You're saying, you know, now we can see you naked on this thing occasionally?
If I happen to be naked, then yeah.
Whoa. What about, you have a boyfriend?
I sure do.
Now, does he live there with you?
For now, he does.
Well, see, now that's not good. We don't want him in the place. And what about intimate moments? Intimate, you know what I'm talking about.
Joffrey's not comfortable with that. Sometimes he kind of like loosens up a little bit, but most of the time we turn off the lights and pull up the covers.
But it would be fine with you to have an intimate moment on the camera.
Sure.
Really?
I'm not going to dump Joffrey just because he's got a little shy streak.
Well, think about it.
You gonna volunteer?
I would, yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll come over and we'll see what goes. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, my number one overall feeling is that it's giving Cersei and Tyrion Lannister. Like, that could be a real conversation. My second thought, that's not completely Game of Thrones coded, is a question I used to get a lot is, what would you do if you didn't have social media? And I always used to joke, or I always have the same sort of slapstick answer, which is like, if I were born in medieval times, like I would just be like in the town square, like writing on pamphlets about like the avocado toast I had for breakfast that morning and being like, hear ye, and like trying to hand them out. And although that is really just meant to be a punchline, there's like a real kernel of truth in it. I think a lot of people who don't feel that way and who don't share those aspects of self sometimes like really judge me or attribute to malice, like, you know, like especially with women, we think of them as attention whores or you know, fame obsessed narcissists. And I really think it's so strange that we just like don't have more just like gentle acceptance for like people who are just fundamentally interested in that. So the second thing I think is that it's not often that I see someone else express that fundamental interest in making art out of the self. And it's so honestly a little sad to see someone who was trying to grapple with that same feeling before like the technology that I was born with. Like in 1996, I was 5. Like but she was like ready to start making her art, and so she had to write this crazy algorithm. So I feel sad and grateful is what I think.
This all bubbles up to a point where Jenny is very well known. She's being written about. She makes friends with another life streamer. This like early term is beginning to form. Her name is Courtney.
I love that.
Courtney and Jenny become friends. Jenny graduates from college. Courtney helps her move. Jenny meets Courtney's fiance. Jenny hooks up with Courtney's fiance on camera. That is the end sort of this story. And so this is how Salon sums it up. They write in 2000, pioneering webcam exhibitionist Jenny is paying a price for stealing her best friend's boyfriend in full view of thousands of outraged fans. Her peeping Tom followers are elbowing each other aside to spew stinging Jenny insults on public message boards. And then the quote is, "I watched this train wreck for over 2 hours and enjoyed it," wrote Benji Lefebvre, a Jenny Cam fan in Fitchburg, Mass. "I will no longer support someone who is so evil as to humiliate a friend in such a public way." And then they describe it as sounding and looking like the Blair Witch Project when she hooks up with him on camera, which is wild. This is just an absolutely wild historical artifact as far as I'm concerned.
I am loving this. Like, honestly, like, what do you mean the second part of the podcast won't be this? Can we just do this for both parts? Do you have another story ready to go? I'm obsessed.
We got a bunch. We're building to you. So we're getting there. Yeah, hold on. So we got more. So hold on. So Jenny and the guy, they get into a relationship after the affair episode. It doesn't go well. It feels too public. The infrastructure of the internet is a lot more malleable back then, though. So when she finally decides to kind of vanish from public life, she can. Jenny essentially pulls everything down. We found like one modern interview from her, which was Reply All in 2014. And she said that, "I was exhausted at the end. I had to develop a pretty thick skin for both the good stuff and the bad stuff." And then she said, "I don't want to distrust every stranger. I don't want every good thing or bad thing to make me feel defensive or proud. It became almost too thick of a skin." So what are your thoughts about the Jenny episode? How do you kind of feel about it?
I feel so protective of her, and I feel so much empathy for her. I always felt really like I didn't have the language in my own brain to talk to others, but even myself, about the experiences that I was going through, like what it was like receiving so much criticism, what it was like being so watched at such a young age and in college, just like Jenny. And I also didn't know, like, it was sort of like when the early days of social media, which I'm realizing wasn't even in the early days. Like, Jenny was caveman era. I was like, mid Second Dynasty Egypt. Like, I had irrigation and domesticated animals. Like, I was actually way better off than I thought I was. But she, like, I always think of how we used to not know that, like, smoking was as bad as it was, and like people could smoke on planes and it wasn't a problem, and like now we know smoking like really causes cancer. I really documented my relationship with my boyfriend at the time at Cambridge on my Instagram. And I really didn't know what sort of effect it would have on our relationship and the tax that it would, like the social human tax that sort of documentation would take. had we only traveled back in time and done this strange Jenny Cam Hot Ones circa 2012,
right,
it could have saved me a lot of trouble. Thanks, Ryan. But I didn't know about Jenny Cam, and I didn't know, there were no examples for me of what would happen if you documented a relationship online. I would never do it again. But that's definitely a lesson I learned that I did not know at the time. So I really just think like, God damn, like, wow, even though you say she was so lucky to be able to delete the trail, I look at her and I think like, she's so unlucky because she was so alone going through these things. Although I always saw it glass half empty at the time, like there's so few of those other people, at least there were other people. Jenny was completely alone.
But she also wasn't the only one for long, and things do get more extreme for Jenny's predecessors. And we're going to talk about that right after the break. We're doing a big Q&A episode over on our Patreon this month. If you have any burning questions for us that involve a screen and or being outraged at it, you can send those questions to panicworldpod@gmail.com. We're going to be dropping that episode later this month. You can also shoot me a question on Discord. All of those notifications go to the same place because in the world of smartphones, push notifications are virtually meaningless. The middle period between Jenny and you, I think, is this really strange, quick evolution. And we found a couple examples of this like middle, like to late 2000s period.
Ooh,
are you
tell me.
Are you familiar with Cracky Chan? Have you ever heard of Cracky Chan?
No, where the fuck are you getting these people? Okay, actually, what year is Jackie?
Okay, so Cracky Chan appears in 2005. Yeah. And so the next two internet women we're going to talk about became famous in a very niche and very kind of confusing way on a little website called 4chan.
Sorry, did you say 2005?
2005, yeah.
Got it. I was born in 1991, so I'm 14 now.
Yeah.
This is my first year of high school. This is like, Facebook has not yet come to high school.
Here's a blast from the past. Here's a photo I'm going to send you in the chat. This is Cracky Chan. This is the photo that she posted to 4chan in 2005 that made her an underground internet celebrity.
Oh, it's a link to knowyourmeme.com. This photo is a girl with clown makeup and a hand that says Sup 4chan in Sharpie on it. With her clown makeup, she's also wearing one of those navy blue and white sort of Japanese style Sailor Girl outfits. I feel like this meme should be We Have Dasha at Home. And it's just this photo.
Yes. So 4chan, I think, had only been around for like a year or two, if that. This girl uploads this photo and she became such a fixation on the message board that moderators had to step in and literally filter out Cracky Chan. They had to like block conversation about her. Yeah. And there was 20 other kind of like MySpacey photos of her that were uploaded, and the attention was out of control. It like actually scared her. And here's another example. Here's another link for you. So this is, I'll read this. So this is a 4chan post about Cracky Chan from 2005. I'll never forgive you assholes for chasing that adorable girl away. You are all horrible, disgusting people, and I hope there's a God and he makes you suffer in hell. I'll never again be able to fall asleep without thinking of her warm, cute, smiling face. You've ruined my life completely. All I do all day now is think stuff up to post about her on Troll Talk, which I think is like a message board, to get people to talk with me about her because that's all that's left. I'm going mad.
It's all caps now. It's because that's all that's left. Now it's all caps. Keep going.
Okay. I am going mad. I hope you're happy with what you've done. If I ever see someone mention 4chan in real life, I'll fucking beat him to death with my belt. Eventually, I should be able to kill all those responsible for this. Discuss.
And then discuss is all lowercase. The grammar in that kills me.
So this part of it is very funny. And then obviously, as these things do, it gets dark pretty quick. So they break into her live journal. They steal her photographs that were on her live journal and post them to 4chan. They become obsessed with her. She then breaks 4chan. Like the activity about her breaks 4chan and it like goes offline briefly. They're talking about her to the point where like they're banning her picture, they're banning her name. There are spin-off sites created. And then by 2006, she has to literally post a photo just being like, stop, like, leave me alone. They even found out where she was working, which was a Blockbuster, which is very 2000s.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, so this is a dedication to Cracky Chan that someone has written fairly recently, which reads, I rewrite this so often it's sad. I never know what I would say to you if I was given the chance, but I guess a small thank you would be a good place to start. I feel like there was something missing in my life before I found you, and I'm sure that sounds cheesy. Your images helped me through a rough time when I was a kid. I was having severe family issues, and I felt like I could not go on. I was just a girl with a lot of issues. You helped me with that. At what cost, though? Because I feel like if I could give up that happiness I got for you to be able to be happy, I probably would. That sounds dramatic, but yeah. Which I think is like a really interesting dynamic in these early stories, which is like there are armies of creepy men, and then there are like people who do seem to be genuinely like, thank you for sharing your life with me, as little as you have. It's a bizarre kind of parasocial relationship, don't you think?
There's that great James Baldwin quote that is on my list of quotes to memorize so that I can sound smart and not just absolutely butcher it when I want to reference it. But it's like, it goes something like, I always thought I was alone until I read books. Right. And that all my heartbreaks were unique, and that all the tragedies that befell me were singular, and then I read. And I was talking earlier about how it's like hard, we still don't have like the language to really express some of these very real emotional experiences that we're having on the internet with our connection to content and how content affects us and our relationship to these creators. But I do think it's very interesting that we feel no shame in feeling moved by other types of more what we would consider legitimate art, like a beautiful photograph. If it was framed hanging in a prestigious gallery, and it made us feel less alone. We'd have no shame in that, or no problem explaining why we felt less alone. We'd be like, yes, because it's art, and that's what art does. But I think we really look down our noses and sneer at the same photograph hanging on a wall in a gallery and the same photograph posted on 4chan are still at this exact moment in time literally considered of lesser value. And it's something that I really care about, because as someone who wants to be a writer, the same sentence typed by my thumbs into an Instagram caption, no matter how smart or beautiful or evocative I make it, it's inherently worth less than the same sentence printed in a book. And I just think, even though we're talking about what is ancient internet history, we actually, when it comes to considering internet content, valuable sources of creative expression, we still haven't come that far at all. Not much has really changed since 2005, which is unfortunate for those of us who really feel inspired expressing ourselves creatively online through content.
I was also a teenager in the 2000s. I'm 89, like Taylor Swift, and I.
Oh, nice.
Don't mean to brag. So
yeah, I'm jealous. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So when I think about the 2000s, like one thing I don't see spoken about often is this thing in the 2000s where teenagers are coming online for the first time. Like in the 90s, like you really kind of needed to go to college to get a real access to the internet. Obviously you could if you had a family computer or something, but there wasn't a lot of like teen oriented spaces. And I think in the 2000s, with the rise of MySpace and LiveJournal and Zanga and Neopets and all these sort of different like teen oriented sites, teenagers are like meeting each other, and there's like a slice of life that had not really been documented before that's appearing. And so when I think of like really early 4chan drama, I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there's like a lot of really weird adult men in the mix here, but there's probably like a lot of teenagers who are just like acting insane because like that's what teenagers do, and they've never seen teens on the internet before. Like it's a new idea.
100%. 100%. I also don't think that those comments are like, I know we laughed at the first one because it's funny, but both of those comments, had you told me that they were commented today, I would believe you. Like the number one thing I was struck by is how little the internet has changed with those comments. They sound so modern.
We have always been people on the internet. And one of the main reasons why we wanted to start with Cracky Chan in this section was because she's kind of the precursor for what I think is arguably like the queen of 4chan, the sort of the biggest of these like early underground internet artists. Have you ever heard of an internet woman named Boxy?
You know what is so crazy is right up until Jenny Cam waltzed into my life at the beginning of this podcast episode, I really thought myself a historian of women on the internet. Who the fuck is Boxy?
Oh.
I've never fucking heard
I'm
of
excited.
her.
Okay.
Who is Boxy?
There's a good chance you'll recognize her, but let's start with
Let's fucking hope so.
Let's start here. So this is a screenshot I just sent you. This is from her Gaia Online profile. Kind of walk us through this screenshot. If you could read us the MySpace speak that it's written in, that would be fantastic as well.
Okay.
So
I'm just
I just
pulling
sent
it
it
up.
to you, yeah.
Oh, wow. This is incredible. Oh, hey, I'm Boxy. I love, and oh, hey is spelled O-H-A-Y.
You've got to spell it that way. That was very big back then.
And this is all in caps lock. I love space, not space, but
Right.
The grammar is I love space, semicolon.
Yeah.
That deliberate space between love and semicolon.
Have to.
Hockey, 4DD1 pants. Waffle. Was that waffles or something?
I think it's waffles, but I don't know.
But like in like a dumb little like millennial core speak.
I think these are other users. I think it's
yes, you're so right. Yes. Waffle, Aunt, Moo Chan, and Tai Hubby, all users. Yes, girl to left is me. No, I is not hot. GTFO, I'm not. And then a really like angry, frowny, yelling face where it's like capital D colon and then like the angry eyebrows V. I'm okay with that. Smiley face. I love my life. Oh my gosh, she's so not like other girls.
Yeah, she's
Click
the best.
my signature to help with my quest, please. PLS. Then a little emoticon typed out V and 3 for heart. Nalani S. All my art. ILH?
I love her. I believe.
I love her.
I believe.
Yeah.
I'm going back to my days of AOL Instant Messenger. I think that's I love her.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
So Boxy's story is kind of interesting because it starts very differently than Jenny Cam's, where Jenny Cam and even Cracky Chan to some extent are, these girls and women who use the internet to communicate with an audience, where Boxy, she gets famous because she's using YouTube to speak specifically to her friends. She was not trying to become famous. She buys a webcam, she makes a video with it, and she says hi to her internet friends that she was talking to on Gaia Online. So here's some good internet speak for you. This is another screenshot. I want to get in on some of this. I want to read this one. So, oh, hi, guys. I didn't see you, HYEWDUR. I was too busy making 4DD1 a video. I loo you guys.
Wow, this is incredible.
So and the whole thing culminates in a video that goes very viral. In fact, it's probably one of the most early viral YouTube videos of that era. We're gonna watch the first 40 seconds together. I have to watch an ad because I don't have YouTube Premium. I should get YouTube Premium.
I may not have Wi-Fi, but I have YouTube Premium. Just not to flex at you like that, but
That's so cool. All right, are you ready?
Are you jealous much?
I am jealous. I'm very jealous. All right, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, hi. Okay. My name is Boxy. Most of you know me as, most of you know me as Boxy, I suppose. If you're watching this, you probably know me as Boxy. But, and I told my Gaia Online friend, buddy, one second, I'm uncomfortable. I told my Gaia Online buddy friend, Admiral Awesome, that I would make a video just for him. So I'm doing it. Here it is. Addy, I love you. I love you. And,
my first thought is, just because Adderall wasn't good for me, I don't think it should be discontinued as a product.
Some teenagers definitely need it. That is definitely true.
Yeah, all jokes aside, there was such a stark difference between Cracky Chan, which, oh my God, just saying that, I feel like I'm going to get canceled. Like,
yeah,
I just feel like rough. That should be like illegal to say. Like, yeah. I feel like I'm saying a slur, honestly, when I say that username. But she seemed a lot more just like, teenage girls have always expressed themselves through different media throughout time. I mean, like you have, Victorian scrapbooks are such a good example of teenage girl art. And I just think, kids of both genders, humans have why we make art is such a mystery, but it's very clear that we've always made it and we've felt a need to express ourselves to some people more than others. But Cracky Chan was just a girl who was expressing herself and got caught up in something she couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
She just her content was too fire for her own good, and she honestly suffered the consequences of that fire ass content. And with Boxy, I think she falls more in the Jenny category, where I look at her and I see someone who likes to perform and who, maybe her end game in life is not content creation. I mean, I'm so excited to hear about how she grew up and what became of her, but you definitely look at her and you think that's a theater kid.
Yeah, she's also so casually online where she's rattling off screen names. She's plugging her Gaia Online character. She's very, it's definitely a switch has happened. And there are kids now who are kind of a little more internet savvy than they were let's say 2 or 3 years ago. But in Boxy's case, nobody notices this video for a year. It has a couple thousand views. That's kind of it. Then it gets posted to one of those early link aggregators called I Am Bored.
Okay.
She gets flamed. This is the peak no women club internet, which is still true, but this was bad back then. And then from there it goes to 4chan's random board B, and take a little guess how that goes. How do you think the guys on 4chan deal with Boxy?
Make her suicidal?
Well, not quite. They get really creepy. It's a lot of older men being I'm in love with her, which is super weird because she's a teenager. And it starts to same thing, like Cracky Chan. They're spamming the board with her. It becomes an inside joke, and she makes a video responding to this. So just for comparison, the video that I first showed you of Boxy has 6.2 million views on YouTube right now. This video, her responding to her 4chan virality, which I just sent you, has 24 million views.
People fucking love drama.
Yeah.
The way she talks also, I feel the way she talks is what the critics of Honor Levy's prose accuse her of writing like.
Actually, that makes sense. Though I buy that, yeah.
Yeah. But critics, not me.
I do think you're touching on something real, though, which is that when young women speak unfiltered on the internet, people lose their minds. And it doesn't matter what time period you're talking about. There's a lot of cultural power there. And then the backlash happens. So exactly like this, Boxy responds. The video gets 1.2 million views in a week back in 2009.
What year is this?
2009.
What year is this?
2009.
That's
crazy. She becomes the most subscribed YouTube account in January of 2009. And so this obviously leads to her being the target of hacking groups, which were very big in the late 2000s. So there's a hacker group called Operation Valkyrie that tries to dox her but can't. There's another group called the Center for Boxy Controlled Restriction that issues a press release demanding that she be removed from the internet. And then they find her real name, which is Katie. They find her MySpace. They break into her YouTube account. They delete her videos. They replace her videos with a video that says that if she uploads again, they'll leak her identity. It's this total playbook that we have seen basically ever since. And it's all because this teenage girl put out a message to her friends. It's wild.
I'm so stressed. Okay, do you want to count me down to watching it?
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, hi. So, my name is Boxy, and it's been a while since I made a new video, so I decided that because of recent events that I could make a new video. I don't do drugs. No, I know that you all think that I do drugs, but I don't, actually, and I actually don't have ADD either, which is funny to me. And then, you peoples were all like, you was trolling, and I was like, I am not trolling, I am Boxy, you see? And,
Okay, pause it there, time out. So, yeah.
So first things first, Boxy, I'm not saying you do drugs. I'm saying you should do drugs. Let's be so fucking clear right now. No, I'm joking. I'm part of the problem. Now I'm part of the Boxy doxers or whatever the fuck it.
She knew the criticism.
She knew.
Which I think is important to point out that she was clearly doing a character. This is obviously kind of a joke between her friends. It's harmless. And in fact, luckily for the end of this little part of the story, the hackers that do sort of attack her and tear down her accounts and stuff eventually realize that like they're just like bullying a child, and they release a statement and they say her videos were annoying and affecting many people throughout the internet. However, she definitely does not deserve to have her life ruined. And then they apologize and give her shit back. Yeah, like
that is crazy. I'm so glad you didn't ask me to guess what happened next, because I would never have gone even close to that. That's amazing. That's such a good. I love when internet stories have happy endings. That's amazing. What happened to Katie?
I'm so glad you asked. We have a video of post Boxy Katie, and I'm going to send it to you.
I went onto the internet to check up on things, and then people would just be saying like these really mean, awful things about me, and I was like, oh, okay, like awesome. And I didn't really want to be there because I felt really, hated. So I would just sort of keep to myself, and yeah, and so then people are like, oh, she never spends any time with us, and it was just sad.
So let's pause it there, because she says something really interesting where she's talking about how people are really horrible to her, but then they're also criticizing her for not being on the internet, which I think is like such a fascinating dynamic where it's like they're horrible to her and then they're demanding her more of her attention.
Yeah. When you, at the beginning of the episode, when you were like, you concisely explain your story, I struggle doing that. Like I don't think I do so many podcasts because I love the sound of my own voice. No, I'm just kidding.
Who doesn't?
Because it's great for selling books, honestly.
Caroline, we all have a void inside of ourselves that can only be filled with attention. That's why I podcast. I got to do it.
I don't think all of us. I think just the theater kids, just the artists. It's like that great Bo Burnham lyric where it's like, that kid at the birthday party who's screaming and he'll grow up to be some kind of artist. Not all the kids at the birthday party are screaming for attention. It's just the insufferable artistic types. But at the beginning when you were like, go do the concise version. But one of the things that I just didn't get to because it sort of happened later was I had a Reddit that to this day, I'm like I feel like this November it'll be like 2 years since I've looked at it. And I went through different seasons of how I handled this Reddit because I would look at it and it was awful and I couldn't stop myself from looking at it. It was terrible because I just felt like I couldn't win. It's like, if I didn't post, they wanted me back. If I did post, they tore me apart. Right. And it just seemed impossible. But something that really helped me deal with it and sort of move past where I think Boxy is emotionally in this video and where I myself have been as well is a couple of years ago, I did this documentary for Vice where they paid me and my best friend just like an outrageous lump sum and flew my best friend from England to Florida and gave us money to make a little documentary about my Reddit. And as part of it, I posted a phone number, like a burner phone number on the account. And I called these people up and I talked to them. And sort of going into it, my hypothesis was that people would fall into like one of two categories. I sort of thought they'd either be like, I'd pick up the phone and it'd just be like undiluted rage, just screaming vitriol the second I answer the phone. They'd be as angry and disgusted and repulsed by me as they are in their comments. Or I thought there might be some strange thing that happens where when they get off the phone, they'd be like really sycophantic almost, and they'd like suddenly switch and be super nice.
Sure.
And what actually happened was neither of those two hypotheses. What happened was they mainly just talked about themselves, and which I found really surprising, seeing as for years, these were people who had contributed, for years, the only reason I knew these people is that they had made floor plans of my apartment. They had circulated my nudes. They had just like every single comment they made was like about me. And it was so strange that when they finally had just like one-on-one direct access to me, that they were just like pouring out their life stories. And I let them talk.
Yeah.
And obviously in a perfect world, I would hope that, hating me and making me feel I don't know, bad about my weight, or you would wish that they could find that belonging and acceptance without doing that. But that's not the way it is. And they do find acceptance from doing that. So you just have to just sort of metabolize it. So yeah, when I watch that video, I just see someone who just hasn't yet found that peace, because she's really young and I didn't have that peace at that age either. So like, no judgment on her.
I will finish her story for you, which is that she moves on. She makes YouTube content a little bit longer. She starts going by her real name, Katie Wayne.
Katie.
She gets some acting gigs. She voices some cartoons, and she quits YouTube in 2017.
Yeah.
She kind of vanishes from the internet. She was part of the cycle of like memes that made NFTs during that boom to kind of like make a little bit of money.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad she got her bag.
She got her back. But when you talk about sort of like this desire for understanding why people are acting this way about these young women, I think what is really fascinating in our timeline as we kind of getting to your appearance on the web is that there's one more important thing that happens that I think addresses this issue in a really bad way, unfortunately, which is that in 2014, Gamergate arrives. So in these three examples, up until this point, people, mostly men, are creepily obsessed. They kind of want to destroy the girl, but they are desperate for her to post and give them attention. And I think the most important sort of piece of this, when we're talking about setting up the modern age of this sort of internet girl phenomenon, is that Gamergate gives an ideology to this kind of bullying. It's not just that I'm attacking a young woman on the internet. There's a culture war that's backing me up. Are you familiar with sort of the broad strokes of Gamergate, like sort of the basics of it?
I would say yes, but please explain it to me again.
Sure. Real quick.
Give me the Wyatt explanation.
In 2014, actually 10 years ago this month, we're recording this in August of 2024, a man named Aaron Gajoni publishes what's called the Zoe Post. And he posts it to different forums, including 4chan. It's 10,000 words attacking his ex-girlfriend, game developer Zoe Quinn. And he accuses her, without any evidence, totally baselessly, that she was sleeping with a video game reviewer for positive reviews of her indie video game. And it becomes a scandal largely because a guy named Steve Bannon, who would eventually go work for Donald Trump, was running a website called Breitbart News. And he hired a games writer named Milo Yiannopoulos to cover this story in the video game sphere.
Wait, I didn't know Milo Yiannopoulos was covering video games at Breitbart. Was he covering other stuff, or was he literally like their video game reporter?
So this is literally a quote. So this is from Milo about this. It's easy to mock video gamers as dorky loners and yellowing underpants. Indeed, in previous columns, I've done it myself, occasionally at length. But the more you learn about the latest scandal in the games industry, the more you start to sympathize with the frustrated male stereotype. Because an army of sociopathic feminist programmers and campaigners, abetted by achingly politically correct American tech bloggers, are terrorizing the entire community. And this was a literal concerted effort that Steve Bannon has later said, like, I saw Gamergate happening and I sent Milo in to 4chan to cover it, to turn it into a political story. And I think it's a really important thing to remember, which is that there has always been women on the internet being bullied by armies of men. But after 2014, the whole internet starts to act like they're a jury deciding whether, a woman online deserves to be harassed. And that's where your story really begins. And we're going to talk about that right after the break. The year is 2012, and you enter Instagram, essentially. You sort of break through the scene. Can you tell me, you've talked a little bit about it already, but can you sort of talk about how Instagram as a platform functioned and how you were using it in the very early days of your internet career?
Well, it was really just because of a character limit. I've always wanted to be a writer. I promise for the listeners at home, Ryan just took a sip of something and choked. He wasn't just, absolutely wheezing in my face at the idea that I wanted to be a writer. He's not part of the problem. He's part of the solution, guys. Okay.
I thought your captions were really good. I thought they were really well done.
Women. But my inspiration, and this is honestly so Milo Breitbart Gamergate coded of me, but my whole inspiration for my entire brand was weirdly Tucker Max. Did you ever read his books?
Holy shit. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay, Tucker Max. I actually kind of see that. Wait,
So basically, listen,
connect the
it's
dots
not
for
his
us.
philosophy
Right.
that I was obsessed with, or like, I wasn't like, oh, he's my role model because I want to go be terrible and come all over sorority girls who I like don't call back and then like make fun of them in my writing. It was because I saw that he had this really smart business model, which was give away humorous, compelling stories about yourself for free on the internet. But at the end of the day, you can leverage that into traditional publishing and get a book deal and have this security that your book will sell once you do get that book deal. But I really saw this sort of like overall trend happening where BlackBerrys had just turned into iPhones. We were carrying our computers more and more. Those computers in our pockets were becoming more and more capable. And I really thought that there would be a shift away from going to these like third-party websites where it's like, to go to a blog, you have to like type in that blog name and like make a choice to go there. And so I wanted to do the Tucker Max model, but without the CarolineCalloway.com being the source of the stories. I wanted to make it available through social media. So I'm at NYU in 2012. I buy those 40,000 fake followers. Hire this best friend, worst business choice of my life, to write these captions for this audience of robots. No one's reading them. I'm having to buy the likes on every photo just to like keep up appearances, which back in that day, I feel like an old person being like, soda pop used to cost a nickel. But like, because Instagram was so just not valued by the culture at all yet. It was this little app for kids. To buy likes for every post was pennies.
Was the idea that like if you had enough, you would get caught in a recommendation feed and like then they would become real, or was it just like kind of like a goofy experiment? Like what was sort of the thought process?
So the story I was telling on Instagram and the content I was using to tell it changed so drastically between that year and a half at NYU, those New York years, and what would become the Cambridge years, where I really
the New York season, the Cambridge season,
the New York season was so different, but that concept really was. It's hard to make even people who were alive then and using social media then truly remember what Instagram in 2012 was like. I mean, a normal post.
It was a place to put photos of my PBR can with a orange filter on it. That's what it was for.
And then your hashtag would be like hashtag Valencia.
Dude, that was the filter. That filter was so good.
That was the caption. You'd filter it and then you'd like hashtag it with the caption, and it'd be like an aerial shot of like a PBR can casting a long ass shadow.
Yeah.
So it's sunset with like a white border. Like it was not
some gross rooftop.
Ryan, on what are the significant developments in Ryan's life. It was almost so cringe and embarrassing to like put something so real and momentous and vulnerable on Instagram. And so it really took me a year of just sort of missing the mark with my content and just sort of, honestly, the influencer wasn't only, now it's a cool job and what kids want to be. It was not yet a job.
Right.
My biggest goal was just to get actual readers. Like I never thought it could be, I was really just trying to get on the explore page. It would be like a photo of me holding a bouquet from it was very Tumblr coded.
Of course.
Bouquet view from the Empire State Building and be like, hey guys, I went on an adventure today. Have you ever, I don't know, woken up early just to do something crazy? Like it was radical for 2012. You have to believe me. It was strange content for then, but it was nowhere near as radical and strange as my content would be for the context of 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, when I left that ex-trend behind, moved to Cambridge, fell out of touch, and I really started finding my voice. But the pressures really started piling up as well. I really don't think that
that's what I wanted to ask about, actually, sort of like, because you've mentioned the book deal and sort of the creativity workshops, and there's clearly like this moment in your narrative where things are becoming intense and they're sort of spinning out of control. And this is, you know, what we've kind of been talking about this episode, which is like, there's always this moment where like you've hit critical mass and things start to get wobbly. And I would love to sort of hear about like, when did you wake up one day and be like, uh-oh?
Yeah, you know, this is a really hot, controversial take, but I am not mad at all or feel any sort of judgment for Logan Paul filming that dead body in the suicide forest in Japan.
You know, I'm not either. I totally get how you could get to that point, to be honest. I really do.
Get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm really allowed to have this hot take since my father killed himself. I'm allowed to have problematic suicide faves, you know, but I think I find it easy. Oh, I can go out into.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna work out.
No worries. I'm gonna go back into the lobby. I'm gonna finish this in the lobby proper. And I made a new friend.
Yeah, that's good. So you're talking about Logan Paul in the Suicide Forest and sort of like the moment where like, yeah, mania kind of takes over.
I don't even know if it's mania, but I think it's the same thing as what happened with Jenny Cam and her sleeping with her friend's ex-boyfriend. You're making content day in, day out. Like every day you're expected to generate this stuff and to have it do well, and you know what sort of stuff performs well, and you like the attention, and you know there are obviously so many downsides, and it's very confusing, and you don't have any help processing these new, very, very new experiences that you're accumulating faster than you can unravel them. And you know, even though it's so hard, it's also your dream. You don't want to let your fans down and fall off and start making bad stuff. And I just feel like all that stuff can really lead you to do something too radical, that you just like are.
The incentive structure is screwed up, right? Like it's like the internet is sort of feeding into these impulses that like, it's almost like hyper real, right? Like it's like, it doesn't feel like the real world and the online world are communicating anymore. And you can kind of make these decisions that in the moment I feel like make sense. Then I know I've done it when I look back, I'm like, that was weird. Why did I do that? And it's like, because the internet was goading me on, I think.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I've made posts where I look back on it and I'm like, that was crazy. You asked, like, what was the day where you, like, woke up and you're like, this has gone too far? And for me, that day didn't come until I, like, got my drug problem under control. Like, I really
that would make sense. Yeah.
I couldn't have, like, the clear-eyed, like, wherewithal to look around my life and actually just perceive with clarity what the fuck was going on, because I was just like high as balls on amphetamines.
I don't want to seem reductive, but I'm just curious, like Adderall is such a specific drug in terms of like output and productivity and energy and sort of this need to be present. Do you feel like it's connected to this point in your life where you are operating on this massive stage, you're producing all of this content, you're like specifically on stims posting, and I feel like that, I mean, was there a connection there?
You know, I didn't choose a downer, like, you know, I didn't become a stoner girl as I tried to like get my Cambridge degree, have a full-time job, have a social life, and like, I don't know, also have a relationship and try to be a good daughter and help my dad. Like, it was definitely a high achieving drug, but I honestly think the truest answer I could give you is that I really struggled with the depression that took my father's life. And you know how we look back at like French kings and syphilis, and like at the time when like French kings died, we'd be like, I guess he has the French disease. And now we're like, that was syphilis. Like,
well, it turns out most Frenchness is caused by syphilis. That is a real fact.
Yeah, most true. French deaths. But I just like, we have the medical knowledge today to retroactively diagnose physical illnesses that people didn't understand at the time that they were killing people and affecting lives, I sometimes wonder if 100 years from now we'll look back at mental illnesses that we just didn't understand. And the truest answer I could give you of why Adderall, it wasn't just that it's sort of like a high achieving, high productivity drug. It's that it clipped into my depression like a puzzle piece.
Right. Well, no, I don't want to lose this thought because you said something really interesting. Sort of this idea of like the French just being caused by syphilis, but this idea that like there's this entire generation of people who have grown up online, and we're sort of looking at them through computer screens and like gawking at them or demonizing them or terrorizing them. And I've been covering internet culture in some form for like almost 15 years now, and I've interviewed like a lot of people who have gone viral, and I would say like 8 to 9 times out of 10 there is like this underlying other thing going on that we're only seeing a fractal of through a screen. And because we're only seeing a fractal of it, people can be really cruel to these people who are like, through whether it's an undiagnosed mental health disorder or it's a substance abuse problem or both, or some other personality defect has put them in front of our computer screens, and we sort of just like throw tomatoes at them.
Oh, totally.
And it does,
totally.
It creates this like total lack of control, this total like issue of gleaming back control. And what I wanted to talk about with you specifically, right?
By the way, I've been loving this conversation. I can totally stay later.
Okay, that's great to hear. So you're really interesting because I see you as the pivot point between like this previous era of the internet where it is mob violence and it is like Gamergate nonsense and 4chan bullshit and women just being demonized for expressing themselves. And then like this urge to glean back control from it, whether it's figuring out why you're doing what you're doing or figuring out how to like monetize it, trying to figure out how to like own it in some way. And I think you are sort of the pivot point. And the reason I want to talk about it here is because you, as far as I'm concerned, you are the first mainstream viral celebrity. Let's call it that, right? To
Thanks. That's nice.
To explore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No,
you're like to actually be a terrible person.
I want to give you I want to give you credit, but I can't say you're the first viral celebrity. I'm sure there's some cat in the 90s. I think it's Keyboard Cat I
hope you clocked the surprise in my voice. I was like, damn, that's crazy.
But I do think you are one of the first ones to like very much in public figure out like how can I glean some ownership back, whether that's through monetization, through OnlyFans, through publishing your own work. Like you seemed very quick to me to kind of be like, okay, there's something here and I want to own this. I want to get some control back. I would love to just sort of hear like what made you decide like, okay, like enough of this. Like I want to be in the driver's seat again. Like how did you sort of make up your mind to do that?
Well, number one thing, I cannot emphasize this enough. I stopped self-medicating my suicidal depression with Adderall. I got excellent psychiatric help. I got on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And that took like 3 years. Like the Adderall addiction was like really difficult to untangle. And even once I, figured out how to think myself through the day without like the zooming euphoria of study drugs, I was still left sort of like blinking and startled and sort of like sleepily waking up within this like smoking ruin of a life that like I myself had dropped bombs on, that was like shelled by me personally. Like I was in $100,000 of debt to my publisher because of this book. I had sold them, and my choices once I've sold it are sort of like either I can turn in the book that I sold, which is not lying outright, but very much lying by omission, because my life, I was a drug addict who was like on the brink of suicide.
Yeah.
Who was going to spend the rest of their life signing copies of a memoir about drinking champagne and castles and ball gowns. Like it felt so, I wanted to be an author for that James Baldwin quote, to
Right.
make people feel less alone in their heartbreak and their tragedy, not to make them feel the worst FOMO of their entire goddamn life because they weren't drinking champagne in that castle with me. Like, I just felt like I had to start over, but to start over meant going into $100,000 worth of debt. And so it took a couple of years just to get stable and to get back on my 2 feet. And the first thing I did was the creativity workshops. And I was still very much working through like my newfound amphetamine sobriety. So the plan I came up with to begin telling this story was sort of workshop it like a comedian at open mic and have these like 40 people serve lunch, like salad, gift bags. I tell stories in person. I can sort of see what lands, what hits, and I can sort of market this like meet and greet, take this tour for like my 40 most intense fans in like major city areas.
Yeah.
And so when I do this, it goes absolutely viral. And this, one of the Reddit haters retweets a thread, calling my event a scam, which was honestly, if I had seen this thread, I would have thought it was a scam too, because I hadn't touched my Instagram since I left Cambridge. So I'm planning these events on stories, and the events change so much. You know, first it's everyone will get an orchid plant, and then it turns out, then I look at the prices of orchids, and that's
Orchids
out the
are
window.
expensive, yeah.
Orchids are goddamn expensive. Yeah. And so, so this woman from the Reddit makes this really, really compelling Twitter thread where she takes real screenshots from my Instagram story that's like, everyone will get an orchid plant, and compares it to the day of where people do not get an orchid plant. and very smartly just doesn't include any of the screenshots where I talked about it changing. And who knows, maybe she even really did believe it was a scam. Like maybe she thought she was doing something really good. But the way that I handled that was that I apologized. I'd never been canceled before. I'd only ever been written about in like Teen Vogue as like a fairy tale. Fairy tale was the word everyone always used. And so I apologized. I refunded everyone. I canceled the tour. I lost so much money just because I bought all the stuff from vendors. Like this wasn't like a fire festival situation where like we didn't have water or like things hadn't been bought yet. Like our problem was we had bought everything, and I just couldn't withstand the criticism.
I want to stop you real quick because I want to talk about this outrage cycle. We'll loop back to your story in a second. So one of the like most interesting kind of threads that we sort of discovered doing research for this episode is that like the outrage cycle that you experience, that like moment of cancellation where things are kind of spinning out of control and you're trying to figure out like, how do I get in front of this? So for you apologized, you gave refunds, great stuff. That has evolved in the last couple of years. And that is where we're going to end our story today with sort of, if this was a Christmas Carol, so we did Ghosts of Christmas Past, Ghosts of Christmas Present. Now we're doing Ghosts of Christmas Future. So now we're going to look towards like the future of being a girl online. And I want to send you a video, and I'm not going to give you any context because I want you to tell me what you think is going on here. And maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. But here's the video, and just give that a little play. We don't have to sync up because it's short.
I please my man in every way, all the ways. Wake him up, he gets to nut. Before he leaves out the door, he's leaving empty nuts. At work, I am calling him like, come outside, it's your lunch break. It's time for you to get your nut off. When he gets home, he's getting fed. He is getting another nut and one before bed, or two if he's lucky. That's it. That's a secret.
Okay, so are you ready for some context here? Because I promise you that we showed you this for a reason. So this woman's name is Victoria Banks, and this clip is from her Instagram. She does not have a podcast. She creates videos that look like she has a podcast, and she says extremely salacious things that look like they're part of a podcast interview to outrage men to advertise her OnlyFans.
That's so interesting.
It's so interesting. And there's a whole world of essentially sex workers on Instagram that piss men off specifically as a way to monetize the outrage to send them to OnlyFans. And what I think is so interesting is when you look through the history of sort of all these blow-ups around like women who would go viral without their consent, or they'd go viral for reasons that were like lacking context, there's now like a totally new generation of creators that have realized this cycle is a thing, realized men will go out of control, and are now trying to experiment with how they can monetize that outrage, which I think is actually pretty cool.
That's so smart, and especially if she's really playing on the trope of like all this sort of style of like Fresh and Fit podcast where they have Instagram models or like OnlyFans models as guests to sort of get to.
I am so happy you brought that up.
When I saw this, that's what I assumed it was clipped from. I think that's so interesting that she doesn't even have a podcast or she wasn't a guest on a podcast. That's so crazy.
And now check out this clip, which is truly awful. But it is the new ecosystem that we're in.
At some point, there's going to be a history of you doing that. As beautiful as you are, you're stunning, you're a pretty girl, but no man that is going to be in your league is going to put up with it. And so the question is, if you were truly in love and you had true desire for a man that would put his foot down with you and tell you how it was going to be, would you or would you not give up your OnlyFans?
No, I wouldn't. Same way if I wanted to really expand my dating pool.
Then you do not genuinely desire that man. You would not be in love with that man.
So this is from a podcast called Whatever. It's run by this weird incel pickup artist guy, and he brings on OnlyFans models, and he just sort of ridicules them. But then the women, they share the clips, and they're like, if you want to see more, follow me here. And they put a link to their OnlyFans.
Wait. I want to understand the payment model. So the women go on the podcast.
Yes.
And they get... The podcast host isn't giving away the content for free, so he gives the content to the girls to put behind their paywalls? That doesn't make sense.
This guy brings on OnlyFans models, and he clips those moments and puts them on Twitter or X or whatever. The women share it. They quote tweet it, being like, "If you want to see more of me, here's my OnlyFans link." So it's like a rushing nesting doll of viral marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So in your case, back in 2019, you found yourself in all these different scandals, and you wanted to apologize and explain, but you realized you could also capitalize on the controversy. But now there's tons of women online who do that. They're goading people and trying to provoke outrage, and then they make some money off of it. But the most interesting sort of example of this system that we've sort of been looking at. Do you know the Twitch streamer Amaranth? Have you ever heard of her?
Yes. Now we're in territory that my YouTube TV videos cover.
Okay. So just for
I love her.
Yeah, I do too. I think she's like an amazing story to kind of end with, to go from Jenny Cam to you to Amaranth. I do think there's a link there of like documenting your life in ways that are sometimes messy, and then reconciling with how you own that and how you deliver that to people. And so for people who don't know Amaranth, she's a Twitch streamer, she's a cosplayer, she joins in Twitch in 2016, and she blows up. She has like 3.7 million followers on X right now. She gets banned all the time from Twitch for like streaming in hot tubs and like pushing the boundaries of content moderation. It then comes out that she was like being financially abused by her husband. And a lot of that behavior was because of him pushing her to make more and more content. She then seems to have, I think, like separated herself from him. She then buys a bunch of gas stations. Do you know about this?
No, I don't know about the gas stations.
She took a bunch of her Twitch money and bought gas stations around the country to make passive income.
Incredible. Wait, I don't know how I missed this.
She's like huge into personal finance.
I know she's making like crazy money from OnlyFans too.
Right. And so she's kind of figured out this. I mean, it's an uneasy, it's like different spheres of influence, and they don't fit together perfectly, but they do give her a lot of money, which gives her a lot of power, which gives her a lot of like ways to invest in gas stations and like own her life. And I think, I don't know, I would love to hear your sort of take on her, because I think she is very much in the legacy of what you have been doing as well, which is sort of like, you've gone viral. Okay, now what? How do you claw back control?
I don't think many people realize that I went viral twice in the same year in 2019 for two different things. I think people really just remember the cut and how I responded to the virality of that article. And not many people realize that what set up both, my ex-best friend pitching the story in the first place, what teed up the sort of the publicity online kindling to like for that article to go viral was this creativity workshop stuff in the very beginning of 2019, like January. I went viral for that the same week that remember when both of those Fire Festival documentaries dropped in like the same week?
I think you got unfairly roped in with the Fire Festival moral crisis.
The headline, this Instagram influencer is a one-woman Fire Fest.
I remember that one, yeah.
That went so viral, and that was the reason she pitched that that story to The Cut, and that was the reason that The Cut story went so viral, and it was also the reason why I responded to The Cut story the way I did, because what I learned from going viral for the creativity workshops 9 months before I would go viral for The Cut was what wouldn't work. And you know how for the laws of gravity, how there's like quantum physics, but also like Newtonian laws of gravity for here on Earth? I sometimes think of how I tried to handle the creativity workshops, Firefest virality, as trying to apply Newtonian laws of gravity to like the zoomed out large scale of like heavenly bodies and planets. Like I was trying to handle the situation as I would if it were a relationship with one person instead of a soccer stadium of angry fans inside the portal of my phone. Like I tried to understand where they're coming from. I tried to apologize. I tried to refund. I tried to cancel the tour. Like I tried to really, you know, if one day your friend shook you by the shoulders and screamed in your face, you are Billy McFarland, you'd be like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about, but like, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and I will do everything in my power to empathize. I actually found that when it comes to such a large scale of people, all the laws of how you should treat a single person go out the window, and you need to start using quantum physics. You need to start using just a totally different set of laws about what you know about gravity. And so when it came to The Cut thing, I didn't apologize. In fact, I doubled down on it. And so I just tried to do everything the opposite of what I did before. And I feel a little bit like toxic preaching this, because it's like, never do what I'm saying to a friend. Like never be like, I'm never going to apologize. Another comparison I often use is that the rules of going viral in a bad way are the same as surviving a riptide. Like you never want to fight against the current. You'll expend all your energy too quick, too soon. You'll drown. You have to swim into the current.
And I think you're right, because like the rules have changed since you went double viral. In fact, we found this really good piece. I wanted to quote this before I forget. So this is from Michigan Daily, written by Ava Bursky. And she writes, so it's a little harsh at the beginning, but just bear with me. It gets better. So she says of you, Caroline, she is a scammer, which I don't agree with, but we can get to that. But she receives a level of hatred and malice that it completely supersedes her artificial Instagram origin and half-baked attempts at creative projects. She may have been shocking in 2019, but even low-grade influencers have grifts that are far more violent than anything Calloway has ever done. Calloway maybe wasted $165 in a few hours of her fans' time, whereas Jake Paul has led a series of cryptocurrency projects designed to fail and rob his fans of thousands of dollars. And like, I actually like the scammer line is obviously like a bit of good marketing, because like any controversy on the internet like is good to a certain degree until it spins out of control, obviously. But like, if you do think about like how the influencer game works now, it is almost primarily driven by grifts and outrage, and how you monetize those grifts and outrage. Whereas like, I look back at what you were doing on Instagram, and like, it seems much more in line with someone who like was not prepared for the riptide of virality that was about to arrive.
Not at all. In the same way that I had never seen what documenting a relationship online, how it can really warp that relationship. In fact, I saw the strangest thing happen before my eyes. Over the 3 years that the boyfriend that I wrote about and I dated in college, I started writing about the person that I knew he wanted to be and how he wanted to be perceived. But by the time we broke up, as I had shaped the way that hundreds of thousands of people saw him, I shaped the way he saw himself, and he had sort of become the character that I wrote about in a way that was very spooky and that I never want to be involved with again. And the same thing with
That's interesting. Wow.
Leaving out all the all of the messy, raw, vulnerable details of my life, I started leaving them out, honestly, because I just didn't have the courage, and my attitude in 2013 and 2012 was no one's owed details of my life, which hasn't changed. I still stand by that part of my belief. But I also had the belief that, it would be fine if I just what could go wrong?
There's a YouTuber I really like named Brian David Gilbert, and I'm mentioning him here now because this story is good, but also I want him on the show eventually. But he used to have very long hair.
Shout out Brian.
Yeah, hey Brian, come on the show. He used to have very long hair, and then he cut his hair short. And he, in the first video with his new hair, he was like, I cut my hair, and you aren't allowed to have an opinion about it because none of you are my friends. And then he just started the video. And I was like, that's so good. That's kind of how you have to you have to create those boundaries. And I think a lot of people, like the Jake Paul suicide forest thing, which we can all agree,
Logan Paul, two different Pauls.
Like the Logan Paul suicide forest, which I think we can all agree, don't film in a suicide forest. Good rule.
Totally.
But
don't sell a book you never want to write.
Right.
Great rule.
Right.
I would recommend that to anyone.
But I will say, if you see people online who are not creating those boundaries with their followers, with their fans, not creating those boundaries with themselves and their own behavior, 9 times out of 10, there's a reason why they're not doing that, and it's not a good reason. There's usually something else going on. I think the history of the internet girl, if we want to call it that, is a hidden one. And it's one that's punctuated by these horrible outrage cycles that are largely just going after young women for kind of rewriting the rules of how we act. And then 5 years later, everyone's doing it. And everyone's like, oh, why did we care about that? And it's because a young woman was doing it. That's why you cared about it. That's why you were mad about it. That's it.
You know what's really interesting about ending on a note of rage bait? Since my first book, Scammer, which happy ending, guys. I finished the book. Hey. I moved to Florida. I buckled down. It got rave reviews. The Washington Post called it a masterpiece. The Washington Post also called me a lunatic. They were right on both counts. But I don't think I'm really out of the woods yet in terms of that riptide. I really think that even though I published the Scammer book, I showed that I'm a great writer, that the ghostwriter claims were, if not blown out of proportion, perhaps entirely false. I think most people are on that page now. Even though I proved myself to that degree, I'm nowhere near to being seen as a Sally Rooney, even though my reputation is in such a better place than it was even 2 years ago.
I think she's kind of a rip-off Caroline Calloway, to be honest.
Okay, you heard it here first. But my next book is called Elizabeth Wurtzel and Caroline Calloway's Guide to Life, because I want to be able to tee up publications to take the stance of Caroline Calloway wants to tell you how to live. I want to tee them up for that easy rage bait by writing an advice book. I want to give all publications and all reporters the built-in angle of won't it make you so mad to hear about what Caroline Calloway wants to tell you? She wants to tell you how to live. This messy girl, this fuck up. I think that's a really smart angle for book 2.
It's a very smart angle, and it's a perfect place to end this conversation, which I have to thank you for spending so much time with us today. This was amazing.
I had the best time.
This was awesome. Panic World is a Garbage Day production. You can subscribe to the newsletter at garbageday.email. Panic World is written and produced by Grant Irving, hosted by me, Ryan Broderick, and our amazing researcher is Adam Bumas. Video editing by Kat Ray Seck. And our incredibly deranged logo was drawn by Gabby Cash. If you want to give us $5 a month, you can do that at patreon.com/panicworld. And in return, we'll give you more content to consume. If you want to buy an ad on the show or sponsor it in any way, you can contact the fine folks at Multitude at multitude.production/ads. And if you want to get involved in any other way, any other crazy scheme you want to rope us into, you can contact our fixer and bagman, Josh Fjelstad, and you can reach him at panicworldpod@gmail.com. Lastly, here's my advice for you. Chill out and touch grass while you still can.